2 words. First word.
Time. First syllable. 2 syllables.
That goes words. That's first word.
2 syllables.
1 syllable.
1 syllable.
Second word.
1 syllable. Okay. First word. Empty. Beer. More beer? No. Second word. 5 letters. 7 letters. Date. Today, March 7th. It's beer week! Yeah! No. Come on. Nope. Nope. Oh my gosh. Boom. That's hot. Jeez, that's hot. Okay, so this video is taking a lot longer than I had planned to edit, and I just can't seem to find the time to do it. Like, things just keep popping up, and it's good. I'm thankful to be finding and having work, but I really want to get this video out. Like, Steve and I are so pumped over it. With that being said, there's a lot of good information here, and it's so hard to cut it down. So, I mean, I'm at like 35 or 40 minutes right now. I'm gonna split this up into 4 parts. Each new week is gonna be like a new beer. We're gonna have new topics each week. I don't think anyone wants to watch a 40-minute video of us just being drunk and having a good time. So, Beer Week, not Beer Week, part 1. Enjoy. Well, this is an upgrade. You are seeing the first video out of this EOS R. I finally got an adapter. I've got my Fovatech softbox here, and I've got a little light panel back here. And then I put a lamp back there. So what else is new? Just got finished editing and filming my first ever vlog, and the response on it was awesome. And I want to thank everyone for watching it, liking it, sharing it. It really means a lot, especially since we're just getting started. I appreciated all the feedback. Any feedback is welcome. Good, bad, which, you know, take it easy. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for watching it and giving it a chance. Editing that video was a beast, for me at least, since I'm just getting into it. Here I was thinking it was Friday, because I wanted to get it out before the weekend, and I thought it was Friday, and it wasn't, it was Thursday. Whatever. So, without further ado, let's get into it. It's Beer Week. It's Beer Week! My roommate Steven and I are going to be tasting beers and just talking beer, you know, and just any memories we have associated with it. We've been friends for 5 or 6 years now at this point. He makes beer, and he just made one this past week, or no, 2 weeks ago, I think. And it's a Kolsch, if I remember right. So he's kegging that this weekend. I'm gonna film some of it. Excited for it. So let's get into it. feel like I'm in a TV studio.
There's a studio in our basement, and it's awesome.
We originally were going to do this in the area that I had recorded last week's video, and Steve's like the mastermind. He's the creative guy here.
I saw it.
He suggested we come in here, and so Great Lakes Brewing poster in the background.
Shout out Cleveland.
So we have upgraded since last week. I mentioned that a bit already. I've got my buddy Steve here joining us. We got beer. This is the most important part. It's beer week, baby.
It is beer week. Come on now. The moment we've all been waiting for.
We were originally going to go to Bold Patriot Brewing at an L&L market here in Nashville. And it was a little cold, a little dreary. We didn't really want to impede on them. So we had the idea of getting some of these 16 fluid ounce cans to go. They can them right on the spot, which is awesome. And so we will be introducing each of these a little bit later. We each got a 4-pack of these 4 beers, and we're going to be tasting them. We're going to be reviewing them. We're going to be talking beer. We've got some beer games that we're going to be playing.
Test our knowledge.
We ain't got nothing going on tonight, baby. we are here.
This has been in the books all week.
So let's get into it then, huh? So we now are going to be drinking on this John Adams, and we'll give a description of that in a minute. But first, I want to introduce my buddy and my roommate, Steve, here. We've been friends for 5 years now. And
beer partners just as long.
Beer partners just as long.
Well, my name's Stephen English. I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, just outside of Cleveland. That's where we get the Great Lakes paraphernalia. That's my Ohio brewery right there. I am an audio engineer. I've done music production for a while. It's what brought me to Nashville, and currently I'm actually taking pre-med classes. That's a whole other story, but beer enthusiast. I've been brewing beer for a while. I've been drinking beer for probably just about as long. And Zach and I have a rich history with beer. We've brewed together, we've drank together, we've tried new beers together, so this is an appropriate setting and matchup for freaking beer week.
Beer week! We'll just crack it. Make sure they're not, let's dive in here. This is the John Adams.
A California common or a steam beer, which we're about to talk about. Not a lot of hop profile, but you know what? That's not always a bad thing. That's not always a slam. Not every beer I want needs to be a hop bomb.
Yeah. Please.
Well,
talk about the
bitterness. Comes from hops. We're talking alpha and beta acids, my friend. So when you don't brew beer with a lot of hops, it's not very bitter. This one is more like sweet. People call it caramely, malty. It's more grain forward. That beer you were talking about that I made that hopefully we're going to be drinking in a few days, it was made with pretty much like 90% of the same grain. So it's very simple. And I imagine a beer like this probably is, it's just the grain profile is simple. You get a lot of the grain flavor. It's just clean, crisp.
Let's talk about the style of the beer first. So the John Adams here, I'm reading this straight off of Bold Patriot's website. It's a steam beer, a darker, more roasted version of the steam beer made using two-row crystal northern brewer hops and a lager yeast strain fermented at ale temperatures. And their version of this classic California common is more malty and less hoppy with a nice clean finish. And I can attest.
Well, this is news to me. This is news to both of us. So this California common steam beer is the first time I've ever heard of it. But I guess a brewery out in California had a what sounds like a proprietary strain of yeast. So there are 2 types of yeast. There's lager yeast and ale yeast. And those are the 2 types of beers. So everything is either a lager or an ale. Yes, there are stouts and porters, but both of those fall into these categories. And those are dependent on the type of yeast you use. And if this is your brewing vessel, ale yeast is going to literally ferment. You're going to see like a layer on top, and lager yeast is going to quite literally ferment on the bottom. So what they did here is took that lagering bottom yeast, which typically lagers are fermented at low temperatures, and they just essentially fermented it at a higher temperature. And they created a yeast that is able to sustain that temperature difference. And a lot of times brewing or fermenting at a higher temperature brings out the flavors of the yeast. Sometimes that's a bad thing. Sometimes if you have beer and you're home brewing and it's, winter and you got the heat cranked, that actually can give you some off like yeasty, they call them estery flavors. So you get kind of like some weird fruit, banana-y flavors. And it's interesting the flavors you can get from beer from things that aren't actually in there. Like I've made a beer and it tasted like banana, and a banana never came close to the beer.
God.
But it's because I was like uncontrolled fermentation temperature. So California Common, really cool hybrid between a lager and a yeast. A lager and a yeast. A lager and a yeast. Enjoyable.
We haven't even gotten to the fourth section. We're this is insane. I'm so excited. We've been looking, I mean, Steven's been looking forward to this probably ever since we mentioned something. Yeah, you kind of came up with the idea, actually. He came up with this whole idea.
Talking about, we were talking about getting beers and
beer and
talking,
stuff, yeah. So, we're going to talk a little bit about just us and the tradition of the beer that has brought us here today and the brew nights.
Yeah.
So brew nights, this became a thing when we moved in together in 16, I think. That sounds about right. Essentially what it is he picks a date and I'm just kind of there, you know what I mean? I'm just there for the fun and the entertainment of it. He's brewing all the time. He's like, oh, we're brewing beer. I'm like, you're brewing beer, you know?
I rope him into it every time.
But I'm fine with that. I'm fine with it. I don't care.
But what he doesn't tell you is how many batches, we're talking 5-gallon batches here. We're talking 5 gallons of beer that I probably haven't spilled or dropped because of him. Even filling up that keg yesterday, I was like, Zach, can you hold this? Because it's on a padded chair and the keg's doing this as it's starting to fill up. So say what he will, he's probably saved more beer than he's made. He just doesn't realize it yet.
Brewer's assistance. Anyways, essentially what it is, he'll start brewing, you know, we'll get the wheat and the hops and everything, get that going. We'll light up some cigars.
Critical.
Very critical to this whole process. If that doesn't happen, well, you know what? And we'll grab a beer. We'll crack a cold one, and we'll sit around the fire and watch this thing happen. And it's a lot of fun. We can never seem to do it during the day. It's like...
I've tried so hard.
It's always at night, you know? Like, we'll plan it, be like, oh, we're doing it during the day this time, and then something will pop up, and be like, all right, it's about 6 o'clock. This takes about another...
It's winter, so it's dark at 5 o'clock. We're always out. The last thing we do on brew day, we take basically our future beer, and we cool it down as quickly as we can. I've got this contraption. Maybe we'd show it later, actually. But we run cold water through this pipe to cool the beer down, and I've yet to do that in the daylight. It just always just gets late. It's a long process. I'm disorganized. I need to go to the brew store. I forgot something, but that has never been performed under the sun. But maybe one day.
Drinking on this John Adams. That sounds really dirty, doesn't it?
Still enjoying this. This is good. But
let's talk about the brewing process, I guess.
How deep are we going?
Let's just start. There's basics, I guess. More of just kind of like if you're explaining this to a 10-year-old.
All right. Try not to geek out. There's a stack of magazines about yay high upstairs that I just kind of...
On the back of the upstairs toilet. That's where they sit. So start kind of just your initial... What stuff are you getting for the brewing process initially? Just kind of what you're going out to buy. Mm-hmm. And then kind of what goes into those initial stages. What exactly are you doing?
The main ingredients in a styles vary, but you're talking about your malted grains, malts, hops, water. I call it grain tea because it's what you do. You take a big old pot of water, you get it not boiling for the first part, but hot enough as if you were making like tea. And sometimes we even use a giant tea bag and we pour like, I don't know, it depends on the beer, but like 5, 6, 7, 8 pounds of grain. And we steep it for about an hour. And so you get this brownish liquid and then you either filter, or if it's in a bag, you can pull out the grains. What you're left with is a conversion of sugar water. So all those grains and carbs, they convert sugars into heat and they extract from the grains. And we had our hops, alpha, beta acids. Don't forget
Alpha, beta.
That is the takeaway.
Don't forget it.
The earlier you add the hops, the more bitterness you're going to get. You add them later, it actually affects aroma, and you get different off flavors. So there's strategic timings for hops, and there's so many different types of hops and grains, and that's like the science of it. I don't get into recipe building, but that is the amount of grains they make. They make specialty grains. They're making hybrid hops. Like I am not interested in that because I would rather have a recipe, like follow it, make a good beer. But you do that, and then you introduce yeast, which is a single-celled living fungi. Like it's very much so alive. And since you have the sugar water, it eats the glucose, little ADP, ATP action, little conversions happen. You get CO2. Again, 15-year-old, back it off. All right. You get carbon dioxide as a byproduct, but also yeast eats sugar and poops
Alcohol.
Ethanol, man. That's what's up. That's just a byproduct of what they're doing. They're out there surviving. They're eating. Again, it's an organism. It's alive. It just so happens that they're not there to produce, but it's one of their byproducts, and they're synthesizing all the glucose, and ethanol is one of the things that comes out of it. So
does it have to sit at a certain temperature while the yeast is doing its thing, pooping and
pooping out the good stuff?
Reading some of that behind the toilet literature, you know what I'm saying?
Well, this is where we revisit our lager and ale yeast, and I'm not going to get myself in trouble with the brewing community, but there's a certain temperature target that you should, like, lager yeast is cooler, and it can be obviously above freezing, but I think it's typically like below, I don't know, 40, 45 degrees cold. I mean, they used to do it like in caves. That's what they call lagering. So cold. You can even put it in a refrigerator and it would still ferment. It's made to do that. Where ales could be a little bit higher, maybe like the 40 to 50 type range, 55, somewhere like that. So a lot of home brewers are at the mercy. Like, you can build setups. This last beer I put in the laundry room and it was cold. It's uncontrolled. I'm sure it changed every day. So it's like, that's probably one thing that a lot of like people are missing is like the actual controlled temperature fermentation, where you can be like, this was fermenting at 53 degrees for 7 days, just like,
So then after that, after the yeast is pooped and after it's been stored right and after just all of that, you keg it and it carbonates. I guess kegging, from what I understand, is a little bit of a luxury, and so that's what it's doing. It's sitting over there in the refrigerator, and it's just carbonating, waiting until we can drink it on up. Thank y'all for watching Not Beer Week, Beer Week, Part 1. Thanks for listening to everything Steven had to say about the brewing process. So come back next week for some more beer and some more good times. See you next week.